Hey guys, this is Connor from Rocket Talk. We kind of made a slight mistake by making this podcast well over 3 hours. So to keep things short, we decided to split this up into two podcasts. So this is going to be part one, and you can look for part two very soon. Thanks again for tuning in.
Hey guys, welcome back to Rocket Talk. This is episode 3. I am Johnny, and I'm here with Connor.
What's up, guys?
And Luke.
Hello there.
And we've got quite a bit of news for you guys today. We've got a lot of stuff ranging from movies, TV shows, video games, and we're even going to have our Luke's Lament coming up pretty soon.
Yes!
It's going to be one of our ongoing mini segments that we'll have throughout some of our episodes. We'll end it with our recommendations, as always, talking about Luke's YouTube video about Tetris, and Connor will give his recommendation for his one that we'll watch in the next week. So, Connor, you want to take it off with your first topic?
Yes. So for to to add to this long-running list of reboots and stuff, we've got Rick Moranis showing up to the big screen for the first time in like 23 years, like live, as opposed to like his voice work. But I was not surprised that they wanted to reboot this particular franchise. I was surprised that they were able to get him back because it's been 23 years. And I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on this. And then I was also kind of hoping that we could talk about them milking our childhood nostalgia for money. Although they do have my money guaranteed. Yeah, but what do you guys think about this? Is it like strange to see him like rebooting for this particular franchise after 23 years? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I love to see Rick back. He like you mentioned, he hasn't been on the big screen as a like live action appearance since the last Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie, Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. It was a direct to video in '97. Because he retired from acting to raise his kids because his wife died back in like 1991 from breast cancer. So he stepped away from it for a while to go and take care of his children, and then after they grew up, he just didn't really have the desire to get back apparently. But I guess this one, it was enough, whether it was enough money or he just wanted to go and play that character again. But yeah, I'm excited to see him back, even if it is an issue we always have with reboots. The one thing I do like too is Josh Gad has been cast as his son, so he's going to continue kind of like the legacy of what Rick Moranis' character did in the original. And so I think that's a perfect choice. They should work well together. Like Josh Gad, that's a perfect fit. And then they also got Joe Johnston back to direct it, who did the original Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and then later did Jumanji, Jurassic Park 3, Captain America 1. So they have a veteran guy doing this. They're not just throwing some guy who doesn't know the franchise. So that'll help too. But yeah,
yes, with these characters, we'll definitely have hopefully the same spirit on screen from these characters. But also, I guess it was Rick. I think Rick said that he never planned to like fully retire. He was just stepping back temporarily. So I guess it's not.
Yeah, it's
totally a shock.
But yeah, because I guess he just, even though he was never fully retiring, he never really wanted to get back into it. Is what he was always saying, is that nothing really like was drawing him back. So I don't know if it just because he liked this franchise so much, or if it was Disney wanting to give him a lot of money.
Maybe a little bit of column A and B. But I mean, this I really liked the first one. I never did see the second one. I'm probably going to go see it for sure. But what do you guys? Are there 3?
Yeah, there's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Honey, I Blew Up the Kids, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, and Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. But the third one was direct to DVD. But yeah, they never did as well as the first two. I mean, as the first one, like always.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I'm still going to go see this. Do you guys plan on going to see it?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I only saw the first one, the very first one, when I was very, very, very young. Like you said, it came out over 2 decades ago, so it's been quite a while since he's been acting. And I think one of the things that's going to entice me to go see it, and maybe even go and rewatch the first one, but watch the others for the first time, is the fact that he is willing to break his retirement, or he's willing to come back after so long for this movie. So
there must be something special about it.
Yeah, I think there's got to be something special about this series that I think hasn't really been talked about much. I've always heard of it, of course, but there's not a lot of people that think that it's their favorite movie. So I kind of wonder what it is that's likely to be a hidden gem. That maybe
Yes.
this will be something. Maybe he read the script of this new movie and he thinks that it's definitely something worth coming back to after all this time. And if it is, then I'm excited to see what they have.
Have you guys ever had, or is there any reboots of franchises that you guys loved as kids that got it right?
Let's see. I mean, they're not really reboots, but continuations. I liked the new Star Wars movies. I know that's kind of a unpopular opinion, but I've enjoyed that. That's not fully. I mean, I guess we've sort of seen it with Spider-Man. We've seen it in the superhero movies done well. Spider-Man, the Dark Knight trilogy, those have been done well. But thinking of other like film franchises that were rebooted, I can't really think of anything that would be ones where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this was a perfect one. I guess Jurassic World, so that's half a reboot, half a sequel. That one, the first one was really good. I never saw the second, but the first one is a really good movie.
Yeah, it was decent.
Yeah, I think like you with the Star Wars films, I probably have an unpopular opinion of thinking that the Disney movie remakes, reboots, remakes, whatever you want to call them, I think they're actually pretty good. Some of them better than others for sure, but I liked Beauty and the Beast. I thought Aladdin was good, like it wasn't bad. And I thought
I've enjoyed them.
Yeah, I think Lion King.
Same.
Lion King's one of my favorites, and so that was one reboot or remake, whatever you want to call it, that that I think fell a little flat for a few reasons, just because the first one is so iconic that to me maybe. But I don't know. I feel like Beauty and the Beast is better live action than animated. Hot take, but I think it was better.
It's very hard for any studio, for any franchise to capture the magic of something when it's brand new.
Yeah.
So they do have the expectations to live up to, but I mean, they're going to continue making reboots and they're going to continue getting our money.
And I think that like a lot of people shove away reboots right away because it's an idea that's already been rehashed. But if you think about it, at this day, there's no idea that hasn't been done already in some form. So yes, that's kind of a cheap way to allow for reboots to keep going maybe, but I think that we should see what people have to offer, because not all reboots are worse than the originals. Some reboots are better than the originals.
Yeah, what I like about this too, where instead of it just being a straight, I still haven't seen Lion King, but the new one, but the nice thing about this is it's not a remake with a slight variation, like they make Jasmine more like self-empowered, or they do this with this character. This is a half reboot, half sequel, kind of like Jurassic World, where it's continuing the story, but it's also a new story.
Yeah.
Similar to what we're getting with the new Ghostbusters that's coming out later this year, instead of one like the all-female cast Ghostbusters, which now they're even pushing away as like not even in the same universe. Like the new Ghostbuster Afterlife is after the first two movies, and it's not like the all-female cast one like doesn't exist. It's a half reboot, half sequel. So like it's stuff like that I think is the better way to go about it, because then you can pull on the nostalgia strings like what this will do, what Ghostbusters can do, Jurassic World, but it can do enough that it can do some new things, can try some new things that you couldn't do in the originals, whether that was just limitations or something in the script. And so then they can go and now have a continuation of it. And I like that.
And I mean, how do you have a reboot or a sequel or anything without playing to the nostalgia of the first one by having a little bit of fan service? Like, I mean, the new Star Wars movies have plenty of fan service, but it's almost necessary to at least nod to your origins and nod to the original fans who were there in theaters.
So I think the biggest... No, you're good. I think the biggest waste around that is, while I like The Force Awakens Episode 7, The Force Awakens is nearly a carbon copy of A New Hope, like in terms of its
yes.
Bad guys have big, evil, powerful weapon, planet-sized thing. Good guys have to go blow it up. And while main character gets wisdom from the old character who had from the previous generation had seen through all this stuff, like Episode 7 is basically episode 4 made in 2015, where episodes 8 and 9 do a lot of callbacks and fan service to the other movies, but their stories are different. Even if like there's a little too much fan service maybe in episode 9, it's still the story of episode 9 isn't the same story as episode 6, and the story of Last Jedi isn't the same story as Empire Strikes Back. So you have that where it's not just a straight, hey, we're taking this same movie, redoing it, but we're tweaking a couple things, like having the cast be all this way, have the cast be all that way, and a new song or a new type of bad guy. But it's, in the grand scheme of things, if you sum the plot up in two paragraphs, it's the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, if you guys want to, we can move on to the next segment. One that we've talked about, we've done before a few times. Luke's Lament, where he talks about something that makes him sad, things that just upset him and make him want to yell at somebody for making a dumb decision.
Please don't yell into the microphone, but you can give your hot take.
Well, so first is the on a more positive note with it. So the Stranger Things teaser for season 4 just dropped a few days before we recorded this podcast, and that's awesome. I've been a big fan of Stranger Things since it dropped. I think it's fun, even if it does try to pull too much on nostalgia of the 80s for people that don't like. I know people don't like it because of that, but like I think it's a fun show. But in the teaser, they do show a spoiler if you're wanting to stay away. There's going to be some spoilers in this episode now, so but in the teaser, you find out that Hopper is alive, and at the end of season 3, they kind of tease that Hopper was dead. And I wouldn't be as upset about this if they didn't have that letter at the end of season 3. If you remember, it was where it was Hopper wrote it out when Joyce told him to get his feelings out about 11, and so he goes on, and it's a very well done scene because the note goes over just like how 11 basically. Like it's a hard to 11 basically has been like a daughter to him, especially after he lost his biological daughter before the events of the first season. And it was a really well done, touching moment. And so like it sent Hopper off in a good way, because he kind of went full circle. He wasn't he wasn't heartless, but he kind of shut himself out from emotion after he lost his daughter, and now he opened it up to 11 after he had after 11 basically became his daughter, and then they're just like, nah, it's fine. Hopper's alive. It's actually going back to episode 9. That was one of the biggest issues I had with episode 9 of Star Wars, is that they had this where you think that certain characters are dying, and then they're like, nope, it's fine.
Like with Chewie?
Yeah, like Chewbacca, or with the C-3PO, even though more his memory gets wiped, you're like, oh man, like when they killed off Chewbacca, you're like, oh my gosh, they just killed off Chewbacca, like an iconic character. And then not even 5 minutes later, oh, there was a second ship, Chewbacca's okay. And it's like, I'm glad Chewie's okay because I like Chewie. Just like I'm glad Hopper's coming back because he's such a strong character, but also, no.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
it ruins the emotion. It'll take away from it, because now it's one of those that if they do kill another main character in season 4, whether that's Hopper again, Will, Mike, 11, if they kill off a character that's like one of the main kids or one of the main adults, after this they have to stay dead. Because they killed off Billy, and Billy was a bigger character than even Barb was. But Billy was not one of the main ones either. Where if they killed off Steve,
kind of a bad guy. So
yeah, yeah. So like it's one of those that if they're killing off someone like one of the main characters, they have to let them stay dead now, because if we keep doing this, it's kind of like the same issue that Marvel had for a while, where they seemed like they were going to tease someone's going to die, and there's it's just Quicksilver, and it's like, oh, someone's going to die. Oh no, Rhodey just gets paralyzed, but because he's best friends with Iron Man, he just gets a robotic like biosuit on so he can still walk. And
they need to take the risk. They need to have the balls to kill off someone that the audience loves.
Exactly.
And it, at least spoiler alert, when Iron Man died, he served his time, and he kind of had a goodbye. But to make things more realistic, they should die in battle, or they should die. Kind of what I did like about Barb is that they killed a friend that we thought was going to have a little bit more screen time, and that's made it more realistic. But a lot of these shows, they don't like to take the risk. Maybe you guys know this. I think I've bitched about this before to you guys, but like with Marvel movies, love them or hate them, they're pretty dang funny, but they can never let a serious moment be a serious moment. And my example for that is when Thor Ragnarok, when Korg was on the ship and he's saying, we're gonna build a new foundation. It's the people that makes it like a truly good world or something like that. And then we see that explosion from Surtur, I think it was his name, with the big fire demon. Anyways, we see the giant explosion. And he's like, nope, the foundations are gone. It's like, you can't just let a serious moment be a serious moment.
Or even with Endgame, think about like the whole like there's so many. I realized it too when CinemaSins did that video. Like there's the whole thing where they just lost half of their friends, half the universe just got wiped out, and they're still having these like one-liners at each other, and it's just like, I get it, and sometimes comedy can help with tense moment, but for a movie it makes it better. But for the grand scheme of things, it's like, hey, billions of people just died, but let's make a little jab at each other, about
just let a serious moment be a serious moment.
I actually think in Endgame, Robert Downey Jr. I think did the best job of reacting how he did, which he was angry, and he had funny lines, but they weren't meant to be funny. They were just they were funny because it came from him, and he was angry. Like he said something to Rocket Raccoon, and like there was a bunch of people that were making like little jokes, and he said things like I said that were funny, but his reaction, his anger, is kind of what helped guide that. Whereas you don't always get that.
I think he became a recluse, right?
Yeah, well,
that's why he bought that cabin so far out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I think like you're right about like with Hopper coming back when they did that with Infinity War, when half the world died. No one, I mean, I don't personally, I don't think many people believed that all of them were going to stay dead. I don't think anyone believed that. And you can't have, knowing that all of those characters died, it's hard to really care. Like, so many people were like, it's so sad to see Peter Parker die. And I'm like, I didn't feel anything at all for Peter Parker.
It was more to the shock.
Knew it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you knew it because all the characters, like most of the characters that were alive, was basically the entire OG Avengers. And then, a couple pieces here and there. Like you knew, sure, the movie was already finished, but Infinity War came out a few months after Black Panther just like obliterated the box office. And it's like there was a sequel coming. The first Spider-Man standalone was so successful that there was a sequel coming a few months after the then unannounced sequel to Infinity War. It was all that you knew. Okay, it's like, okay, maybe they're gonna kill, like maybe Bucky would stay dead, or maybe this or that. But you knew when Black Panther and Spider-Man and Mantis and all these other characters that had just got into the in the MCU, it was like, they're going to be back.
If they wouldn't have released that list, because I know they had the list from who knows how, so many years now. They had that list of upcoming Marvel movies. If they just would have stopped making that list, I think it would have actually like blown some people's minds. But if you've ever been to any movie ever. I mean, it was sure. I think the people who did get dusted was fairly shocking. But if you've ever seen any movie ever, you knew they were going to somehow do some sort of timey-wimey magic thingy to bring him back.
Yeah,
exactly. Because it is no matter what. Yeah, when and to Marvel's credit, they did do a good job when they were marketing Far From Home with Spider-Man to purposely blur out his birthday, to purposely blur out this and that. They did enough so that way. We didn't know with those first couple trailers, is this before Endgame, like before Infinity War? Is this after? They teased it enough to where we wouldn't know until after we saw Avengers. But yeah, it went with them having that roadmap out. It made it, but also too, even without the roadmap out, going into it and seeing basically every new character dying. And it's like it's the original Avengers left in shambles. It's just like, okay, they're going to come back, even if that was like a shocking moment that caught people off guard.
So with and I'm going to try to tie this back to the original Stranger Things reference. With Stranger Things and Hopper's alive, that means other people are potentially alive, because in the beginning of the season, when they were trying to mess with that machine, obviously they didn't know what they did. The scientists that were there blew up and their insides covered the walls. But when Hopper and the I can't even remember what the Russian's name was that were fighting, when the machine did the exact same thing, they just disappeared. I'm not sure if I can't remember if they did some tinkering with the machine to cause that to happen, but potentially a lot of people could come back. And I wonder if the machine was controlling the portal to the Upside Down and the monsters are somehow attached to the Upside Down. Do you think the monsters that killed the people or morphed them to be like part of it, disgustingly enough, do you think they could all come back? What do you guys think?
I don't know. So I think it's more they're going to find some way to explain how Hopper survived that, whether it's like he jumped down some sort of like secret passageway or something. I think that's the thing, is that with the way that scene was shot, you never actually saw Hopper's insides explode like the scientists do. So I think that's going to be one thing. So it's not as much that Hopper alive means that all of the random citizens that the Mind Flayer turned into the gunk is somehow alive. I think those people are all dead. Like all the people from the newspaper and that old lady, like they're all gone. And so but with Hopper, I think there's going to be some sort of way they explain it that it's like, hey, he survived somehow, and then whether that it might be a situation where we build the whole season figuring it out, and then in the last couple episodes we finally find out how Hopper actually did it and how he somehow survived.
Asking your particular opinion on this, do you think they'll ever have any sort of explanation, whether it's a simple explanation in the first episode or an explanation that unravels, and I'll ask you this too, unravels throughout the entire season? Is there any explanation that justifies it? Or do you think it's just, he should be dead for the sake of the great send-off? All maybe 99% of their explanations that are possible are kind of BS.
I don't know. I think as long as it feels semi-natural, like even though there's going to be a Deus Ex Machina with it, where like how he survived, as long as there's a way that they can explain it, that it doesn't feel too forced, just like, oh, like
he just jumped underneath the platform.
Yeah, there has to be a little more to it, and I hope that we get some of that, or a situation where that's not the real Hopper, where it's where somehow it's an alternate dimension. As long as it doesn't feel forced, that'll make me happy. The other solution would have been to not have that heart-to-heart letter in there, and then it would have been like having it be less emotional. Like if they just would have had 11 read it and have her react to it, and we don't get to see it outside of maybe a couple lines, then it also would help too. But but hopefully, they can explain it well enough that we see it and we're not just like, really.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Johnny?
I've been thinking about it, and I think the only way that it could be justified to me, like Luke said, I think that what makes it the hardest is not that he came back after he died, but because they put so much heart into his death that bringing him back now is what makes it a bad idea.
Do you think it's a slap to the face to the audience?
A little bit,
kind of.
I think there's a lot of I'm not against necessarily character deaths that are shocking and then come back, because typically I believe that there's I'm the kind of person that's seen enough TV and movies that when somebody dies, most of the time I'm gonna think that they're gonna come back. Mm-hmm. But when you leave something like this, like a letter, to really drive home that the character is dead, so you can move the other remaining living characters forward because of that character's death, that's when it says, this death is important, and this death is one of the pillars of where these characters are going to go. Like Mike, or not, sorry, not like Mike, like Eleven, or like Joyce. Like those two, they're impacted very much by Hopper's death. And if he's not dead, then it's going to be kind of like, oh, okay, all that growth that I did doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I think that in my eyes, the only way, and even this is kind of a cop out, but I think the only way that Hopper, quote unquote Hopper, could come back in a justifiable way to me is if it's not an alternate dimension like you said, Luke, but if it's a bad guy in Hopper's body. I think if Hopper's a bad guy, that will make all of the memories of Hopper resurface, the good memories of Hopper resurface in the heroes that were impacted the most by his death, and fighting and trying to kill this evil Hopper would make would be able to keep all of those memories still meaning something. And I think that's the only way that his death could be justifiable, is if his presence now is just the actor playing a bad version or an evil version of some. Yeah.
That'd be great mentally for the characters.
You kind of have that in Lost. So in the show Lost, this is going to be spoilers for the end of this, toward the end of the series. You guys ever watch it? But the character John Locke dies, and the bad guy, one of the bad guys, takes over his body, and it's a different person in John Locke's body, and so so people think it's John, but I can't remember. He might even he goes by a different name, I think, even too, for part of it, just because of John Locke actually being dead. But that's another perfect example where they did that, where it's John Locke, and then he is a different person. Let's see, Jeremy Bentham, that's who it is. And so he goes by Jeremy Bentham, and it's technically two different characters, even though it's the same actor. And you can do that with Hopper too, where it's not Hopper, but everyone thinks it is, and he acts like Hopper. So that could be a potential solution too. But yeah, it just, with having that emotional letter, it's just hard to see him come back and not be a little jaded.
Yeah, and I think if you had an evil Hopper, we'll call him evil Hopper, even though like if it's some bad guy, controlling his body or whatever, and he's actually dead. But if evil Hopper comes back and 11 is the only one who like recognizes it, I think that'd be really interesting to kind of have like 11 and Hopper living together, but 11 can't like fight Hopper because
of the memories, the emotional trauma.
Well, that, but also because maybe there's a reason she has to play dumb for some reason, and maybe she's telling the friends, her friends that like Mike and all of them that he's not himself, but they don't believe it, and Joyce doesn't believe it, but 11's the only one who could like see through it. I think that might be a good way to bring him back in the sense that like it's not really him, and it keeps the story going, and she has to keep it a secret because maybe he's some super powerful alien that she knows she can't kill, so she has to play dumb, because if she finds out, or if evil Hopper finds out that she knows that he's not really Hopper, then it would kill her. That could be something.
That'd be great writing.
Yeah,
and
like
these writers are solid. I mean, sometimes there's just some terrible writing in shows and they don't genuinely realize what they're doing. But I think the Stranger Things has proven to be a very well written show. So these writers know exactly what the letter is going to do for fans, and then what seeing Hopper after having been emotionally torn by his death in those letters are going to do. So they're going to come up with something, and hopefully it will be good enough to justify it. And maybe it's something as interesting as that theory.
Yeah, well, I guess we got to wait. It's supposed to come out later this year, so I guess we'll just wait and see.
Yep, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. But moving on to another news thing that came out recently, we got our first brief look at Robert Pattinson in the Batman suit. It was like a 45-second teaser where we got to hear Michael Giacchino's music and see him. What do you guys think of the new Batman design?
I thought it looked badass, and there were plenty of people in the comments that would disagree with me. I think the very, very blood red lighting did. Okay, yeah, it did look like the Daredevil suit from the TV show. I don't know did you guys think that?
No, I just thought it looked like the Batman suit with the red tint on it because they're having this red light thing just for a teaser.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about it until people pointed it out, but yeah, I can see that. I'm excited about it. I think that DC is finally starting to get to a place that they want to be, and they're finally starting to know what the audience wants to see and not trying to force things forward. But there's still a lot of questions that I have and a lot of people have about the status of so many other things is this: do we know if this is a prequel? Do we know if it's, going to continue on? Is he from a different universe? Like, he's not Ben Affleck, so
a lot of questions.
so we need those questions answered.
Hopefully they don't just like Robert Pattinson just shows up and nobody asks questions.
Like I'd be so irritated if they just try to switch him out, because there's an age difference there.
I think it's completely
it's
different.
It's not like in the Nolan trilogy where you go Katie Holmes to Maggie Gyllenhaal, or Iron Man when you have Rhodey switch actors. It's like these are two completely different like types of because Ben Affleck was even though I haven't really seen much of Man of Steel or BVS or Justice League or all that, like this is Ben Affleck's an older Batman, more seasoned, where Robert Pattinson, I mean, he's only 33, so they can play it where he is a younger Batman, where this is still early on in his thing. Yeah, how are they going to tie this in? Is this Bruce Wayne? Is this a different Batman? But yeah, I'm excited about it. I like the suit design a lot too, especially the bat symbol on the chest, where it looks like it's made out of guns, which that actually is something from Kevin Smith actually wrote a couple Batman comics a couple years ago, and in that one there is part of his suit that he apparently made with the guns, and the gun in the comic is the gun that killed his parents. So I wonder if they're going to take that idea and have it be where he somehow tracks down the gun that killed his parents, and he uses that on top of his symbolism of bats, since bats scare him. On top of the trauma of losing his parents, he can use bats and the gun that killed his parents to traumatize other people.
Very, very interesting. And do you think that this is going to be a gun-wielding Batman? I mean, this is kind of a shot in the dark because we know so little about it, other than we have some of the cast. But what do you guys think?
I don't know if this is going to be a dark Batman, because I mean, he was kind of dark in BVS too, and a lot less so in Justice League. But I don't know. I would really like to see. I'm excited because this is going to be a Batman movie, and BVS was more Batman, I think, than it was Superman, but it was still both of them together. And so once we know exactly where this is, I think best case scenario, it's a prequel. But I'm just excited to see a Batman movie in this universe, because they've been doing a really good job with they did great with Shazam. I think we'll talk about pretty soon. We'll talk about Birds of Prey. I think they did a good job with Aquaman. I think that they're doing a lot better. Wonder Woman looks great. It's not out yet, but it looks great. And I think some of their newer movies are definitely surpassing the quality of their older movies. And hopefully this one stands out as well as one of the ones that comes out on top.
Yes, and Andy Serkis is Alfred Pennyworth in this. We also know Paul Dano, whatever, is the Riddler. But since seeing Andy Serkis is going to be Alfred Pennyworth, I don't know if he's going to be... he's probably not even going to be Andy Serkis in this movie, hopefully. Well, I mean, we'll see what it's like, but it makes me think that this is not even the same universe. Because who's Alfred right now?
It was
Jeremy Irons.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So,
Scar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is kind of interesting because like James Gordon was J.K. Simmons, and now it's Jeffrey Wright. And we have a different... I mean, Catwoman wasn't in the DC extended universe, whatever their MCU is called, but it's not. They're bringing in new characters for it. I, for one, am very excited about Pattinson being Batman. I know that was always one that people were freaking out about because of Twilight, but like he's been in a lot of good movies since the abomination of the Twilight franchise.
Exactly. And, come on, let it go.
He's avoided major franchises since Twilight. But he's been doing more of the Fox Searchlight, the small indie movies instead of the big budget superhero or based off of. But he hasn't been in a lot of these big popcorn flicks. He's been in more of the like White House. I mean, like The Lighthouse was one of the ones that he was in recently that was shot in black and white and is supposed to be a really good film, but. Yeah, we'll see how he does as Batman. I'm excited for him as Batman. I need to still watch pretty much all of the DC Extended Universe movies. I've only seen Wonder Woman and then like parts of BVS. But I haven't really seen much of anything else.
Yeah, so, like I said, some of them are better than others. I think if you're gonna pass up any of them, it's Suicide Squad. But
It just started out so I think I mean outside of Wonder Woman, think about it. So you have Man of Steel, BVS, Suicide Squad, which all were received mixed to poor, and then
Yeah.
Wonder Woman well received, Justice League still kind of mixed, and then really after that is when they started having some like Aquaman was well received, Shazam was really well received, Birds of Prey, which we'll talk about in a minute too, was received pretty well, so now they're finding their footing, and now they can go on and make another good Batman movie that hopefully can set it apart from all the other interpretations of Batman we've seen.
I still kind of like hesitate to see a lot of DC movies until hearing like what most of the reviews are. But even then, like I also try to dictate, like I'll go see the movie for myself. But DC, they've been doing well enough recently that I don't hesitate as much. But because they haven't done fantastic, I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, this one, I think this looks great because I also think Robert Pattinson has the acting chops to pull off Batman.
And who better to play Batman than somebody who was a vampire for so long?
Exactly. I mean, but come on, like Leonardo DiCaprio was in this horrible Romeo and Juliet movie from like 1999 or something like that. It was god awful. But I mean, if we gave up on him, we wouldn't have the awesome roles that he's been playing today. So like, I think people should just let someone's past go because I mean, he was in a shitty franchise.
Well, also too, there's a lot of good. Rami Malek was in the Twilight series. Anna Kendrick. There's a lot of really good actors and actresses that were in that film franchise that just because of the stigma associated with it, especially because the first one is just so cringy to get through. Because as they get better, I've watched all of them with Abby, and like you can tell the production quality and the budgets get a lot bigger as they go on, and because like people actually went to them. But there's a lot of good actors and actresses in those movies. We're in that purgatory of Twilight.
Yeah.
That some got out of and it's worked, and others they're still kind of stuck in that, like Pattinson is.
And I think this will be if this movie does well, it'll be complete redemption.
Yeah, I think this is what he needs to turn things around. Because I mean, we don't have any information really out yet. Like I said, we still have a million questions, but about like the plot and the status of Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, who, as far as I can tell, have not even said anything yet. But yeah, we'll see when it comes out next year sometime, and I have high hopes for it. I'm excited about it.
Same.
Yeah,
same. I always enjoy the good Batman movies. Going back to another one of an actor that had kind of a troubled past that we kind of gave a second chance with a superhero movie was Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man was kind of a really big revitalization of his career, and now he's one of the biggest actors in Hollywood. So and that was because of like personal issues, not being in a bad movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of hard to like imagine. I mean, I didn't really know Robert Downey Jr. before Iron Man, but it's interesting to think of like how far he's come, because no one remembers when you hear Robert Downey Jr., you're always going to think of Iron Man before anything else. And to be somebody like that, I mean, I don't know how many movies it'll take for Robert Pattinson to be Batman in somebody's eyes before I don't remember what his name was. Was it Edward?
Edward.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Before Edward in Twilight. And, but I think he's on the right track. So we'll see what happens when the movie comes out.
Yes. And I was just to comment, I actually do think of Tropic Thunder too. I think Iron Man, but also I think Tropic Thunder. But that's just me. We don't need to.
Let's not discuss that.
We don't need to
further.
mention that just yet. But that'll be a little bit later down the road. Yeah.
But I mean, speaking of Birds of Prey, we can. That's one of the movies that's recently come out that some of us have seen. I feel like it'd be good if we kind of moved into a couple movies we've seen, kind of review them. Johnny, I know you saw Birds of Prey. Connor, did you see it yet?
I've not seen it.
Okay, well then, so that's Johnny. How did you feel about the movie, Johnny? I've heard a lot of good things about it, even though there's a lot on Twitter and YouTube of the angry basement dwellers that seem to hate it because of quote feminism. Since it's a strong female cast.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought I don't think it's the best DC movie, the new universe that's coming out, but I think it's fun. I think that it's probably, in my opinion, I think it's the most fun movie that there is. And that's
even more than Shazam?
I think even more than Shazam. Yeah, Shazam was pretty fun, but I think at the very least, I think that this movie and that one definitely are neck and neck as like which one is more fun than the other. But I really like that they're putting the energy and the fun movies where they need to go rather than putting them into serious movies where they shouldn't be at all, like Justice League. And so I thought it was great. I thought I've never really had a problem with this version of Harley Quinn. I know a lot of other people have, and if you do, I get it. Like, it's understandable. I think she's funny, but I can definitely see why people could find her annoying. Totally get it.
Well, people also are just mad because she's not hot enough in their eyes for them to do inappropriate things. Like that's some of the biggest backlash I've seen is like they made Margot Robbie not look hot because she's not like she's not like half naked. She actually has like clothes on.
Right. Which I mean, like, I've never, that's such a, like, it's such a dumb, like, argument with no weight behind it. Like, it's just like, it's not even a thing to talk about.
I mean, how do you write a film without sexualizing someone? I mean, I thought that was just good writing.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Sorry you can't, masturbate to a cartoon picture with Margot Robbie.
well,
big oof.
Yeah. Well, like, I think that I never saw them pushing forward some kind of agenda, some kind of, quote unquote feminist agenda. I thought it was a bunch of badass women. There's been a bunch of movies with badass men, and this is no different than that. They're just women. Like, they don't, I could be mistaken, but I don't think that there's many moments where any character says, we're a bunch of really badass women that are getting together, screw the men. Like, it's not like that. Like, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn's the kind of character that might say something like that, and if she did in the movie, and I'm just forgetting it, then yeah, that's a possibility. But the big bad was a misogynistic asshole, and so like his whole thing was like he was like the basement dwellers you see on YouTube comments. Like, if you gave those basement dwellers like a bunch of money and a bunch of power, then he would be the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey villain. But yeah, like, I thought it was great. I thought that, like, you can be an asshole and not necessarily, like, you can be an asshole and be a misogynistic asshole without the movie itself pushing a message forward. You know what I mean? Like, you could be an asshole just for the sake of being an asshole. That's okay. No one's making any political statement about Thanos, who wanted to kill half the universe. So, like, I don't get why this much lesser villain than Thanos would get, not necessarily the villain, but the movie as a whole is having some crisis with thinking that there's a message being pushed forward.
Well, to be fair, and a quick question for the precursor for the question: have either of you guys read the books?
Books?
No.
The Birds of Prey comic books?
No.
And neither have I. So that's where this question may or may not be great for the podcast. But apparently there was a huge deal about this not even being a Birds of Prey movie, and hence why they changed the name. But apparently, like, a lot of these characters weren't even in the original Birds of Prey, or they just left out a couple others. And so that's apparently there's some huge backlash from other types of basement dwellers, the ones that are like comic book purists. They were really upset that they even called this movie Birds of Prey, because, I
mean, we had that with the X-Men series. Like, the well-received X-Men movies had this. Juggernaut in the comics is Charles Xavier's brother. We don't get any hints of that at all in the X-Men universe. There's a bunch of other there's a bunch of other random things here and there that I can't think of off the top of my head right now that were in those movies that are not true to the comics at all. And they purposely did that in some ways because of how the late 90s Batman movies were received, that they went for this more realistic, grounded, serious tone with like the black leather suits and the spandex. But it just, it's maybe, yeah, them calling it Birds of Prey, and if it does have things that differ from the actual Birds of Prey team, that doesn't help. But also, I mean, how many, like, the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics is more than just rockets and Star-Lord and Gamora. Like, there's a huge amount in that have never even been hinted at in the MCU. And so, like, especially when some of these teams have been around, like this is let's see, Birds of Prey has been a team since 1996. So, like, there's going to be a bunch of other people in there, but Batgirl is in it. You know, it's Batwoman and Hawkgirl and Manhunter. There's a bunch of.
But it's also like not even the same. Again, I haven't seen this, so I would also kind of have to rope you into this. Not even the same origin story. So that's I think there was a lot of people, and again, I haven't read the comic book, so I'm not able to speak on this. But I think there was a lot of people that were upset that it was nothing even kind of close to Birds of Prey, and hence why there was such a backlash towards that the studio had to change the name while it was in release.
They didn't actually change the name. That was more just some websites have Harley Quinn's name at the start so people know that it's a DC movie, because the title still is Birds of Prey, and then in parentheses, and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. It's just that if you go on like AMC's website, now it says Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey.
Yeah, I don't think that, like, I also haven't read the comic book, so I don't think that when it comes to the formation of the team and the members on the team, the Birds of Prey team, and who should be on it and who's on it that shouldn't be and all that, like, I think every iteration of any superhero team, like Luke said, if you make a new iteration, a new form of media or a new story, then I don't see what the problem is with keep bringing in new people, new faces. You know, that's okay. We're starting a brand new story, a new version of it. It can be called Birds of Prey because the name Birds of Prey is iconic for reasons for readers of the comic book, but this is Birds of Prey in the movie. Like, it's hard to say, oh, that's not who Birds of Prey is supposed to be, but it is, because this is this version of Birds of Prey. Like, that's okay. The problem that I do have is that it's not a Birds of Prey movie. It's a Harley Quinn movie with other characters in it, and that's not even really a problem. Problem is even more intensive word. I think that it's a great Harley Quinn movie. And if anything, if this movie, the thing that I would give it consider justifiable the most for it to be called Birds of Prey is if this sets up more Birds of Prey movies that do not include Harley Quinn.
Spinoffs.
Yeah, like spinoffs. Like Birds of Prey 2 or Birds of Prey : whatever. Because there are other great characters who definitely deserve to be in more movies. Huntress, Black Canary, Renee Montoya, like, they're all great. But they don't form a team until the very end of the movie, like the final fight. The movie itself is all of these characters coming together for various reasons that they're not even on the same side. They just all realize, like, they all hate each other. All these characters, they all have,
it's kind of like the first Avengers.
Reasons. Yeah, they all have very good reasons to hate each other, but they all also hate this big bad asshole guy. So they all come together and they're like, in the trailer they say, like, you killed the best friend, you betrayed him, I did this, you're trying to build a case around him, we're all in trouble here, we all hate this guy, we all need to work together or he's going to kill all of us. And so it's like, yeah, you have to work together. And so after the movie ends, they have kind of this spoiler alert, but after the movie is, like, getting towards the end, they did the thing, they saved the day, whatever. They're all sitting around and hanging out together, and then Harley Quinn drives off and, like, runs away from, like, their little hangout session because, like, she's, like, not really a team person. I'm like, great, perfect. I love that because I never felt that she was really a part of the team. I thought that the others fit in together really well, and it was great to see Harley Quinn be the catalyst to form the team, but I don't think that she belongs in the team. I want to see more Harley Quinn movies, I want to see more Birds of Prey movies, and this was a great way to form all of that going forward without them being together.
So I think can spin them off and then have both be separate. Yeah, well, because
exactly.
I mean, you, like, some of these characters, as little into some of the more expanded DC comic book lore it is, like Huntress and Montoya, like, those are some, like, beloved characters in the comic series that now, we are getting them in a movie together, and maybe once I see it too, I can know more. But if it sounds like it's better for them to split off, then hopefully we can get that.
I think it would be a lot smoother if DC did give some of those characters, maybe not necessarily all of them, their own movie before they did the group movie, kind of like the Avengers formulas. You give everyone like an origin movie and then bring them all together. But even then, like, you can still introduce some people in the actual team movie.
Yeah, I think that the only problem, again, I don't even know if I should be saying the word problem necessarily, but I think the only issue that I can see that this whole breaking off into different paths idea making for DC is that this one movie, to me, created the potential for 2 other spin-offs for more Harley Quinn movies and more Birds of Prey movies, which means that there's gonna, if they keep doing that, which is great, like, it's good to have more characters, but if you keep putting more on the plate for DC than they might be ready to handle, then there's going to be a lot of characters who aren't getting the screen time they deserve. We still have not seen much of the Flash or Cyborg outside of, or anything of Flash or Cyborg outside of Justice League. Superman has only had 1 movie himself. Harley Quinn has already been in 2.
2 team movies.
2 team movies. And so, well, I guess, yeah, Superman was also in Justice League and BVS, but like, you get what I'm saying? Like, the bigger characters are kind of starting to get pushed aside for these minor characters that are becoming really popular. And like, I don't know necessarily that Birds of Prey and Harley Quinn are going to get more movies, but I think that it's been doing decently well. This Harley Quinn movie has. So
reception wise, box office wise, it's not. It's actually,
oh, really?
It's bombed bad in the box office.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
So it only grossed about 145 million so far in its first 2 weeks, and it only made 13 million on Thursday and Friday when it came out, when it was set to debut at 33. So it finished first in the box office, but that's because it was, February 7th. It's the lowest DC movie since Jonah Hex.
Wow.
Jonah Hex. Why do I not recognize
Well, that changes things then. So if that's the case, then so it's the worst DC movie as far as ticket prices or ticket sales go.
Oh, yeah, because it made 75% less than what Suicide Squad made in its opening weekend.
Whoa!
And with this being a spin-off of it, but you do have the issue where this also was DC's first R-rated movie, but also Logan did well, Deadpool did phenomenally well, but as beloved the characters Harley Quinn is, how much of it was how many people wanted a solo Harley Quinn movie, even if it is a team movie, before they got a solo Flash or solo Cyborg. But
this is definitely something nobody asked for.
I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is also nobody asked for it.
Yeah,
either, but so they're going to give us things that nobody asked for.
But Guardians came out. Well, nobody was asking for Guardians, but they were not given a good or bad view, whereas Harley Quinn was seen in Suicide Squad, and a lot of people didn't like her in Suicide Squad, and I think
she did fine.
I thought she was fine, but a lot of people didn't. But now giving her a movie after the poor reception of her is kind of like, nobody wanted this. We know who she is. We know like what to expect, and you kind of get what you expect. It's just like Harley Quinn and Suicide Squad, but blown up. Like, it is Harley Quinn. She is the center of the show, and so like by that I mean, like, nobody asked for Guardians because nobody knew who Guardians were, but nobody asked for Harley Quinn because they knew who she was, didn't like it, and even though in my opinion this was a good movie, the ticket, what Luke said about ticket sales makes sense to me now, because like nobody liked Harley Quinn and they probably didn't give her a chance in this one. So
well, I mean,
she might not get another movie.
Honestly, like they can just, this is what they should do. Give us some of the characters from Justice League. You even have plenty of characters we can go off of in Suicide Squad, as long as it's what we want, and then slowly introduce the Birds of Prey cast into other movies if they wanted to, maybe buddy movies, but we don't need another team one without setting up all the individual characters' stories first. Yeah. So they can still bring them in slowly over time and still make money.
But we've said that a lot with DC, and I think
they still don't get it.
They don't get it. I mean, why are you not listening to what we're saying?
Oh man,
come on, DC, listen to our podcast.
Yeah, like Suicide Squad was an issue, Justice League was an issue, and now Birds of Prey, in my opinion, wasn't an issue, but it's not getting ticket sales because of Suicide Squad. So, I would love to see more Harley Quinn. I would love to see more Birds of Prey, but if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. But yeah. But you know what did happen?
What
And
happened?
what somehow, and someone checked to see if hell has frozen over. We got a video game movie, and get this, it was actually good. It was good.
It's hard to believe. The Sonic movie came out. Here's a crazy thing for you. So critical reception doesn't make or break a movie, but Sonic the Hedgehog is the third video game adaptation movie to be fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, so 60% or higher. The other two is Angry Birds 2 and Detective Pikachu. So those movies also came out last year. So it took until 2019 for us to get a good movie in terms of critical reception in the video game sphere.
Wow.
Jesus. I mean, what a time to be alive.
Yeah. Finally. They're doing it.
Here's the crazy part. After the first Sonic trailer came out, if you would have said, "Hey, this is going to turn out to be one of the best video game movies of all time," what would you have said?
That's a pretty low bar.
Yeah, I'd say, wow.
That's not exactly an accomplishment.
Big yikes.
Yeah, but
what would you have said?
I would have said you're joking, because up until right before the movie came out, I was expecting a train wreck. I was expecting, like most other video game movies, it was going to be somewhere in the 30-40% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was going to be nothing like the source material. It's going to have nothing that makes it seem like Sonic besides a blue hedgehog. But yeah, did you guys end up seeing the movie?
Yeah. I saw it, and it was not, I don't think that it was anything earth-shattering, like groundbreaking, like just phenomenal. But the fact that it was good surprised me, and I enjoyed it. And I because it's a video game movie in a video game franchise that I really liked, I'm going to see it a second time.
I actually, I wouldn't mind seeing this a second time. I thought it was, because it's a video game movie, I did have to go in with low expectations, even though it is Sonic and I do like Sonic. Because it is a video game movie and it did good, I think as far as video game ratings go, I think we could even put it in the great range. As far as an overall story, not a great story. It's a simple one, but it was
very predictable. But it's done well.
Don't think too hard, popcorn flick. But it did exactly what it was supposed to do. I thought it did. I thought it was a very fun flick. Although if it would have been the original design of Sonic, I think it would have been so hard to get past his creepiness. I wouldn't even been able to enjoy it.
You definitely.
I think that one of the things that appealed to me the most, I'm hearing a lot of people think that like Sonic was annoying because he talked so fast, he talked a lot. I thought he was adorable. And I don't necessarily this is not the Sonic that we see in the video games, which is cocky and mature and kind of
more leadership,
sarcastic. This is a very young, new Sonic, which I like, because it gives the opportunity for the movie Sonic to become the Sonic that we know from the video games, and we still get that young emotional Sonic that we got to see. And when he wasn't sad, when he wasn't when it wasn't a heavy story moment, he was fun, he was zipping around, he was having a good time, and I thought he was adorable. And what drew me to loving this movie as much as I did was how cute Sonic was, which would not have happened had he had his old design. I would have thought he was cute the whole movie. And if he had his old design with those beady eyes and the weird smile and all that,
human teeth.
His human teeth,
and his hands being white instead of gloves. No, I agree. It's another thing to think about too. So we'll go a little more into some spoilers of this one too, like we did with Birds of Prey. But the whole thing at the start of the movie is when he goes to Earth, he's a young child, and then he spends 10 years secluded. Like, he has to watch in the shadows. He has to entertain himself by talking to himself. So he doesn't have the ability to be this more leadership, cocky character yet, because he hasn't been able to do that yet. He hasn't gone on the adventures like he does in the games. When you're seeing him in Sonic Adventure, technically that's after the original games that he may have not spoken, but he's already saved the world from Eggman multiple times, so where by the time we see him talk, he can be more cocky because he's done this. He hasn't done this yet, and he gets more cocky as the movie goes on because he's starting to do things. But yeah, as a big Sonic fan, I also was happy with it. You know, like you said, Johnny, it was nothing groundbreaking. It was like how I felt with Solo. It did nothing that hasn't been done before. You know, it's a pretty predictable storyline, honestly, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to be a decent movie that could help tell a new version of the story of Sonic, and they did that. They did callbacks to the classic series. There's a bunch of Easter eggs in there that are pretty easy to miss. One of my favorites was in the movie. At some point, he pulls out a map, and it's a bunch of different places he can go to with his rings. There's a Sega Saturn logo. There's in the center, there's South Island, which is where all of the Sonic 1 levels take place. There, the Mushroom Planet is a callback to Mushroom Hill Zone from Sonic 3. There's so much in there, on top of the fact that there's Sonic and Eggman, that it has stuff for fans of all ages. There's Easter eggs in that movie that fans who stop playing after Sonic 3 and Knuckles are going to see. There's going to be stuff that fans who have more grown up with the games more recently will be able to pick up on. And yeah, I really liked it, especially Ben Schwartz as Sonic. I think he did a perfect job of capturing this form of Sonic they wanted. You have this younger kind of childlike version of him, and it was fantastic. And then Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey. When he was announced as Eggman, I was like, this is perfect. He can go be his weird, quirky old self like he was back in Ace Ventura and all that, and he'll knock it out of the park. And he knocked it out of the park. And then James Marsden, he was good as Tom, but I think just more the way Tom was written as a character. Tom was a good, safe, generic character that any other person they were considering, like Chris Evans, Chris Pratt, Paul Rudd, would have been just as fine as he was. But
he was definitely the straight man. He was very he was just kind of over Sonic the entire time.
Well, he was a good foil to Sonic.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
Really.
He was, like I said, he was safe. Like, out of the three main characters, he was my least favorite of the three. But also, I don't think he was ever meant to be like someone that was supposed to steal the show.
Well, yeah, I guess they did write him as a really good, like, average, regular dude who just got roped up into something. He didn't. Yeah. He genuinely didn't want to be there until the very end.
I think of this as like somebody compared the movie where you have a character in its own world, typically originally moving into the human world and like shaking things up. And one comparison was the Smurfs, another blue, another
CGI blue creature interacting with realistic humans.
Yeah, but that was so bad. Whereas like the similarities between Sonic and Smurfs is very similar in terms of like where they were and where they are now in the human world and how they interact with people. But the difference is that like I can't exactly say what because I don't know what it was, but this was done well. And I think that like there's something about the way that they were. It might have been that they kept the cheesiness to just Sonic and Eggman and like or Robotnik, and nobody else was that over the top cheesy. And most of the interaction was with Sonic was also like that Sonic had was to Tom, and maybe it was like building that friendship and that interaction there that gave the movie more heart, but there's something about it that was done well in terms of like taking a character that I and a lot of others think could have been done better in a different world, but playing it safe on the human world is what I think will give it more traction to expand in the future and go somewhere different in the future.
Think about it. So not only was this one of the best video game movies we've seen, it is one of those best in that kind of weird creature, or anthropomorphic creature and human CGI live action hybrid like Alvin and the Chipmunks and Hop and Smurfs, all these other franchises that movies that have done this, and yeah, they all missed the mark, and all those like the Sonic movie are kids movies, but they're missing something that this one had, and I don't know what it is, besides the fact that it has Sonic.
I would be one to say I think it's because they're not trying to shove the entire video game into one movie. They were willing to have a slow burn, and by slow burn I mean ease us really far into it, like really slowly, and they'll give us Easter eggs here and there, but they're not trying to shove the love of the entire thing into one movie, because this movie is clearly going to have a sequel, and it's going to be able to introduce things slowly over time to where it doesn't get distracting from the actual story.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I haven't seen it, but that's one thing that Warcraft, the World of Warcraft movie, that was the biggest gripe that people said about it. That it was a good movie, but it was trying to cram too much of the World of Warcraft lore into one film. That Absolutely. If they would have,
gets distracting. Yeah.
I know nothing about Warcraft because it wasn't even. It was I don't know much about the world, but it wasn't even World of Warcraft. There was like a series before it was Warcraft. Yeah, so it was based on the original pre-World of Warcraft series, which was Warcraft, and I had to see the movie 3 times to understand what was going on, and I did because I loved what I was watching, but every single time I watched it, I learned something new. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense why that happened, or that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I loved, like I said, it was great, but I don't think other people had the patience that I did to go and enjoy something, even if I don't completely understand it. I was like, this was just really cool. Whereas Sonic, they kept it really simple. They did make a few artistic liberties with how the rings work, which I'm fine with. Like, I think that, like, I don't know how you could otherwise implement rings in some way other than how they did.
There's a couple ways they did that. So think about it. So in the games, giant rings are used as portals to special stages, to different dimensions, different worlds, whatever. But one that someone else made that was a good point is the rings sort of count as extra lives for him, and those lives are the ability to travel to different planets. And so his new life is him going to Mushroom Hill Zone, or to Mobius, to Seaside Hill, like these planets that are based off of things in the Sonic universe. That's his different lives. Another thing too is when he has his rings with him and he gets hurt, he jumps up right away. And the few times he doesn't have the rings with him, when he does it, that's when it's more of the, is Sonic dead moments too. And so that's another little thing. Yeah, it's like,
great.
Like, I don't know if that was how they planned it, but someone else said that to me, and like that might be how they did that.
It makes sense, and it's great subtlety that the writing team took into account. So it's nice that they're not trying to shove everything down our throat and buy products. These are for action figures.
I mean, other than for Zillow and Olive Garden.
Yes, true. I did like that.
But that was funny when they did that. I like that a lot. I wish we got a little more of Agent Stone, because his interaction with Eggman was always really funny. But yeah, and I liked the movie. It's weird that a movie, especially one that, like, in a franchise like Sonic that's been handled so poorly for the last 2 decades, is the one that does well. Because, I mean, think about it. We're at the point now where the last 2 good things to come out of the Sonic franchise last 4 or 5 years has been Sonic Mania and the Sonic movie. Both of those were not made by Sonic Team and Sega. It was other people with the help of Sega. But Sonic Forces was made by Sonic Team, and that was a lesser game than Mania. And now this movie was made by a different studio, and it was well done. I think we just need to take Sonic away from Sega.
Yeah, like I think the people who made Sonic kind of are starting to not be the ones who should continue on with Sonic, Like, maybe that's a broad statement, but I think that from what we've seen, like, Sonic is doing really well in the hands of people who didn't create him. So,
Yuji Naka isn't even making them either. But yeah, but yeah, the team who's working on them now is not.
Yeah. I think even at the beginning, like some video games will want to take a character and just very loosely, throw something out to the audience and see what sticks, and not really care about the history of the video game or the video game based on the movie that they're making. But I feel like with this one, like Luke said, there were not just subtle references to things in Sonic's history, but also it's clear that there's a future with this movie and series because of the beginning. You saw echidnas that were chasing after Sonic, and that's definitely going to come back up. Like, I don't know necessarily. I don't think it's super important for Sonic's history to know. Well, there never was an owl mother-like character in all of Sonic, but the echidnas chasing after him, that's happened before. Something similar has before, and I think that's kind of going into. It's clear that they dug into his past to see what would fit best into bringing him into this world, rather than just saying, "Oh, some animals chased him away" or something like that. No, they were already. They already decided that there were going to be echidnas, and that it's very important that it is those, which hints at Knuckles coming into the series. Probably not too far off, you know. I think it would fit the formula best, maybe, if he was introduced in the third one. But if he came in,
split the third one into two parts.
but if he came in the second one, that'd be great too. But Sonic, we're about to go into. If you guys are interested, I'd like to talk about what we can see in the future, because there's a lot of stuff that could happen with Sonic going forward. And this is a huge spoiler alert for people who have not seen the Sonic movie yet. But Tails is introduced in the mid-credit scene of the movie, and I lost my shit when I saw him.
The entire
all 13 people in the theater, were losing their shit. They were all 14-year-old boys, and one person said that was the greatest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Afterwards, I was like, "Oh, you're 14."
Quote that, 14-year-old boy.
Yep. The entire theater lost their shit, and
there were people clapping in my theater.
Yep.
Yeah, when the movie ended, people clapped at mine too. But then when they showed that at the end, people were starting to walk out because, you know, they haven't gone to enough Marvel movies to know. Hey, I should say a little bit. But yeah, when they showed that, everyone's like, oh, and everyone was freaking out and clapping, and it actually was it's the same voice actress that voices them in the games too. So that was fun too, because you had them. Actually, another fun callback, another minor callback. One of the military personnel, when they were meeting to send in Robotnik, was actually one of the original voices of Eggman.
That's awesome.
It was the Eggman in the cartoon called Sonic the Hedgehog, the Saturday, the one that's more like the
Pingus?
comic book.
Was that the Pingus guy?
No, it's a different one.
Okay.
Pingus.
Yeah, because there's been a few different Robotniks in the Sonic series throughout it, even in the cartoons. But yeah, it's not that's a different guy. So sadly, but yeah, he was Eggman in Sonic Underground, and he was Grounder in Adventures of Sonic. That's right. Okay. So, but just the fact that we have that, like, we have an Eggman, and he's one of the ones that gets Eggman in.
Was he seen, or was he just a background actor?
Yeah, he was seen. I don't remember which one he was. I just know he's in it.
Was he in that conference room saying you're not about to bring in who I think?
Yeah, he was one of those.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Going off where you were saying what we're going to see more of, I think we're going to see more of Chow World, or at least there's going to be some sort of reference to it.
Almost have to.
Yeah, you know how like they'll help animal buddies or something like that. You'll get those throughout like Sonic Adventure 2. I think that was when he was rescuing the turtle.
Yeah.
I want to say that's kind of what they were going for.
Well, I think, or just in general, I mean, like the whole, like the very thin plot of Sonic 1 is that he is trying to help, because Eggman is trying to roboticize and industrialize everything. Like the whole kind of concept of Sonic is almost the nature versus like industrialized world type of thing, where he is trying to save those animals throughout South Island, and so you get that, and then you do get the Chow later on. But I think it's more of calling back to the original of just saving the animals.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
I think it'd be great to see. Because now Sonic has Sonic has a family now with Tom and his wife, whose name I don't remember.
Maddie.
Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, Tom and Maddie. And so now I think it would be a great time for him to have a best buddy, like his best friend. And it makes perfect sense because he doesn't have anybody from his world. He's new to this world, and having the interactions between Sonic and Tails, where Sonic can be, instead of like having somebody to look up to like Tom, he is somebody that is looked up to by Tails. And seeing that in the future will be really interesting, and I think that's going to help Sonic to grow into the more mature, not so much childlike, but more teen-like attitude that the Sonic that we know has, like a 3D Sonic. It's having Tails by his side and being like, hey, I'm going to help you out because you're important to me. And then movies 3, 4, 17, like I want to see Shadow. I want to see Knuckles. I even thought about like Big, but Amy's going to be somewhere in there. And that's going to be
annoying, but awesome.
Annoying, but I mean, like, that's going to be cool, like seeing Cream, Vector, like just so many cool characters. I want them to phase. I think it was you, Connor, I was talking to you about, but over the if this just pumps out movies, I would love them to kind of phase Tom out of the series. I would love them to, like, Tom's great, but he was a good way to introduce Sonic. But I don't think that he should stick around forever. I think that they should
have it where he goes back to like the Sonic world.
Yeah.
So sort of like what happens in Sonic X, where they end up on Earth and then they go back to their world eventually, and then you can have that where you introduce some of these characters. Excuse me, like having Shadow, having Amy, having whatever, and you can go back to there where you're going on to their universe instead of all these characters in Earth.
Yes, it would be their camaraderie will drive the film, whereas at least Sonic now has he has a hideout on Earth, and he can go and see Tom and Maddie, and it would be great to see them like brief appearances. When they are on Earth and throughout the series, if it does become a multi-movie series. But again, we don't need the humans. It'd be like, oh, hey, Tom, hey, Maddie, how are you? Life's good? Great.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
That would, at least he has a place to go when he is on Earth, and that's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
But I do hope that they do include the teams slowly over time. I don't want them to, introduce like 10 characters in one movie, because that's just too much.
I think if this movie taught them anything, it's that they don't need the other characters to have a good Sonic movie, but they do need the other characters to continue a Sonic series. Yeah. I do not want to see 7 movies of this, what we've seen. It's great for one time, but now we're getting Tails, and that's great. But even now, it's kind of like, I want to see Sonic and Tails go between Earth and their world, and then the next movie is more in their world, and then movie 4 is completely in their world.
Yes.
Like I want the humans to be phasing out.
I mean, they can almost do it like the classics, where like they introduce Tails in the sequel. They sort of hint at, and then they introduce Knuckles in the third one. They can use Amy in the fourth. Like if this does turn into like a couple trilogies, where they're doing it where they only introduce 1 or 2 of the game characters at a time. They don't pull a Sonic Adventure where there's like 3 or 4 new characters or anything like that, where it's just like, hey, here's all these brand new characters that you don't know about in the movie realm, even if they are classic characters in the video games. If you introduce 1 or 2 at a time, then you're not overloading, like, oh, hey, here's Shadow, here's Amy, here's Cream, just for fun. And it's just like, all right, we have Tails, we get the rival with Knuckles, or they can do Shadow. And then it builds up to where then we can slowly build up the cast to where it's this big group of people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And having Sonic, like having all of their powers in a different world will definitely make a lot more sense in a different world than it would on Earth, because it's been great what we've seen, but going forward, I really want to see this become something huge.
Yes. That being said, I could see it being a little bit tougher for them to be in these other worlds for a whole movie, because there's not much relatability. There's not much there for an entire movie. You're going to have to world hop and maybe do it a lot in order to keep things interesting. Because if it's just an entire movie at one world, and where's the I guess the only thing then that comes from the entertainment would be his battles with Dr. Eggman, because we can't just see him running around in a world and avoiding obstacle courses, because then it's just kind of boring. At that point, I'd rather play the game. They
could do stuff that does tie in some of those more like bigger branching stories, like the like the adventure titles or Unleashed or '06, where they're sticking to only a few areas, but there is a lot of world building in those to where they're on a planet going to like the whole Sonic 3 idea. They could do something where Eggman is building this this Death Star, and while at the same time while Sonic's trying to go stop Eggman, he is also being foiled by Knuckles, and that can be something they could play off in a Sonic 3 like thing where every time Sonic's getting closer and closer, Knuckles comes and he just knocks him down, and you have all that where you don't just have him just running through a loop-de-loop in Mushroom Planet and in Planet that is inspired by this Sonic level and that Sonic level where and maybe they can find a way with world hopping to do that, because I mean outside of the few minutes at the start of the movie, the whole Sonic movie takes place on Earth. They don't world hop. I mean they hop around the planet, but they don't hop around different planets in the movie.
Exactly, because I mean you need relatability for the audience who like for the casuals, and you need I guess the interaction with humans, and it being kind of a fish out of water thing was the novelty that kind of gave its drive. But now they need to maintain that momentum without losing the spirit of the video games, which is going to be a very thin line to walk.
I am really excited about Eggman now, Robotnik, I guess, at the end of the film.
He's called Eggman in it too, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was called that a couple times, and I'm glad that now he's I think it's not official, but I think Sonic's going to start calling him Dr. Eggman. But I do like that Jim Carrey shaved his head and had the
longer mustache,
the longer fuzzy mustache, because now it wasn't like when he was on screen throughout most of the movie, there was something about him. I was like, I don't know what it is, but he looks like Dr. Eggman light. Like he looks like there's something about it.
It looks like Dr. Eggman that's in shape.
Yeah, and then he shaved his head and he got that mustache, and I was like, that's what it is. Like I didn't even realize that he needed to shave his head. He needed to have a longer mustache. And when he had that, I was like, now we have the Eggman we want. Like now we have exactly. He's probably on that planet getting even more crazy. Like he's not just going to be quirky anymore and angry. He's going to be insane. I think he's going to go batshit crazy, and I'm just so ready for it because he's going to have the look, he's going to have the attitude, he's going to be Jim Carrey still. So
this is his first loss apparently. Like he's always winning. So when he couldn't beat Sonic, towards the end of the movie, he was just getting crazier and crazier, to the point where he's firing missiles into busy streets. And so it's great to see that now after he's suffered this major loss, he's just going to go insane.
Yeah.
It's just perfect.
And now it's hyped up and building off of the fact that he's alone on a different planet with no presumably no way to get off of it yet. And so maybe that's where he'll run into Knuckles and then trick Knuckles into getting him off the planet. And I don't know, I'm just excited to see what happens. But I think before I saw the movie, I was really hoping it would do well for a potential. This is pie in the sky, but I feel like if it's going to happen, it's now, or maybe 15 years from now. But I want to see a Smash Bros. I want to see a Smash Bros. Movie, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask or expect one to happen 10, 15 years from now because of how successful these video game movies are becoming. Detective Pikachu, Sonic, Mario movies coming up.
Yeah, we've had Detective Pikachu and Sonic are two of the first video game movies to actually get critical praise. So now we're getting it to where these two are there, they're doing well, and now we can have it where, we can set up. There was jokes, but people were like, I'm expecting the mid-credit scene to be, you see this, all of a sudden you see Mario up here, and it's like, it's a Mario, and he's just like, oh, what do you want? He's like, I'm here to talk about the Smash Initiative, playing off Avengers, but it'd be Mario. And if we do get these more, and kind of like you said with DC, this can be a stepping stone for video game movies where we got a couple safe ones with some, big strong franchises like Sonic and Pokemon, that they made some more safe movies, but good, to where then we can see some of these other series start to come out where we see, because I know there's an Uncharted game coming out. There's Uncharted movie coming out. Call of Duty has one that's in development, and that will just be probably a generic war movie. But some of these other series like Uncharted or Portal or The Last of Us or BioShock, some of these other series that have some more meat to their bones in their story, they could make a movie based off of the game And because now they've learned from some of the mistakes of the bad movies and they can take off what made some of these other movies good, then we can see a situation where video game movies moving forward can actually like become a fairly competent thing, like we see when books get turned into movies.
Yeah, I think that if we did see some big video game collaboration where, like, if we did see some kind of Smash Brothers-esque movie, even if it's not like, all of the main, like, even if it's not a video game movie where it's Samus and Fox and Captain Falcon and all these characters, if it was just like 4 or 5 different characters that came together and they called it Smash Bros, like Mario, Pikachu, Sonic, and 2 others, like, I would absolutely lose my shit over that. And but I also think that with the potential that Sonic has as a franchise on its own, I wonder if it should do like, if world building with Sonic and having other movies that will introduce Tails and Knuckles and Shadow and Sonic characters, rather than focusing on universe building like Avengers does, which is like in this, if this were to happen with Sonic, it would introduce ties into Mario and Zelda and all these other Donkey Kong and all these other movies that have or have not already been announced for a in development movie. I wonder if it would be better for Sonic to not be a part of that and do its own thing, and if it would be more successful if it just stayed with itself and didn't join the quote-unquote not even yet announced Super Smash. This is all theory speak, but if I wonder if it would be more successful being alone or trying to tie in something bigger like the Avengers have done.
Yeah, the only thing with as much fun as a Smash movie would be, the only thing I'm worried about is, I guess they could do something that we can tie it into, like the World of Light mode, but outside of just having a crossover for the sake of crossover, what would the story be, I guess, of a Smash besides the fact that we have Sonic, Mario, Pikachu in a game together?
Well, I think that if we did include Sonic, it would be a villains coming together. I mean, we've already introduced world traveling, and so if Eggman harnesses that, he could go see Bowser, he could see King Dedede, he could see Ganondorf, and he could bring all these bad guys together and say, hey, let's work together. If we work together, we can destroy these guys once and for all. And that could bring Mario, Sonic, Kirby, Link, Donkey Kong, all these guys together. And like I said, I wouldn't want like 8 to 12 person cast. I'd want like 5 movies, 5 video game characters, and call that Smash Bros. Like, unlike Birds of Prey, who are like, that's not my Birds of Prey. I don't care if Sonic is a part of the Smash Bros. Team, even though he's not one of the quote unquote originals. I would love to have Sonic on the original movie version of a Smash Bros. Movie. And Detective Pikachu, if he was talking, that would be great. Pikachu doesn't talk, but if he was a talking Pikachu in Smash Bros., not only that would be easier to include him, but I'd be fine with it. Add Mario, who's getting a new movie soon. Add him in there. And, I think I'm torn if I want Sonic on his own or Sonic in Smash Bros. But I think that if he was in Smash Bros., it would be a lot of world hopping. And I think Eggman would be a perfect person to start bringing the villains together.
That would also beg that all the writing for these movies is incredible, and we can maintain the momentum that Detective Pikachu and Sonic have started. So if we introduced Zelda movies and we introduced movies for all these other characters that you were naming, we'd have to have great movies in order for there to be a desire to even want them to come together.
Yeah.
But no,
we also have to have a lot of work with sharing franchises, because Sonic was Paramount, Detective Pikachu was distributed by Warner Brothers. Mario is being done by the Minions and Despicable Me crew, and that one is let's see, I'm trying to remember which that one is done by. Because that one's distributed by Illumination, which is Universal. So that is one issue that we would have is, Marvel can do it because all those franchises that weren't owned by Sony and Fox at the time were all owned by Marvel Studios. So they were able to have Captain America meet up with Thor and Iron Man because they were all owned by the same group of people, where you have to do a lot of, we're getting to the point where everyone's buying up each other, that, Disney might own them all in 5 years, but it would be a lot of eventual sharing money to where, okay, Universal distributing the Smash Brothers movie, but then Paramount and Warner Brothers and Disney and someone else is all getting a share of the profits because they're letting Link and Sonic and who else be in it.
I think if there's ever been a time where companies can work together to create something bigger, it's now. I think we've seen a lot of cases where even 5 years ago, there's a lot of cases where we would say, oh, that would never happen because these two companies are not, they're separate companies. But we've seen a lot of examples. Typically, it's superhero stuff, but we've seen a lot of examples where they'd bring a character in, even if it's a cameo or maybe it's a full role, and you see two companies that work together despite maybe having their differences before. And I think that even though it would be movies, what we're talking about, video games are great about that. Video games, especially Nintendo. I mean, Microsoft and PlayStation, they work together all the time, and now Nintendo's getting in on it too. So I don't think that them being made by different movie studios necessarily counts anybody out. It just means there's a lot of conversations that need to be made. And if everybody's going to be building towards this bigger universe, like I said, all this is a theory because none of it has been talked about or mentioned. But if they do that, all it takes is a few conversations, and then they can work towards making that perfect movie that they all want to make.
Will you all please listen to our podcast? All you studios.
Yeah.
Seriously, we are making you some serious cash right now.
Seriously.
But I think that one last thing I'll say before we move on is that we've already proven that Pikachu and Sonic can work with humans. And so if we can have the cartoony characters in a video game crossover, as well as characters that are more human, like Link or like Captain Falcon or whoever else, that would be great. And we know that they can do it now. And Mario is obviously going to be more cartoony than realistic, and so it wouldn't be too far off to include him in there as well. Though, like, cartoony and human clearly work together very well, but mixing Mario, who is both a cartoon and a human, would be kind of odd to see with other humans. Like,
that would be so weird.
Yeah, so like seeing Mario next to Link is just they're gonna have to do something. If they stood Mario next to Pikachu, I'd be like, that makes sense. And if they stood Pikachu next to human, it's like, oh, we've seen that before. But putting Mario next to a human, that's just I don't know.
It's just like when Odyssey was announced and we saw New Dawn City, and it was just like, why is Mario next to this PS2 man? Like, this looks weird. Like it's still, every time I go and I play Odyssey, it looks so weird because you'll have Mario, and then you'll have the people from the Sand Kingdom and like all the kingdoms that are these like more cartoony people, and then it's like, oh yes, here's person in suit that is realistic looking.
Yeah, like realistic, like dimensions.
It would also be like weird to see like Mii characters. Since we're talking about Smash Bros. And we bring in maybe even a little bit further of a stretch, but like Mii characters.
Yeah, it would a Smash movie. They would have to focus on more of the bigger franchises, even though Sonic isn't, like Johnny said, an original one. He's still a big enough franchise that has the weight. Like we wouldn't be seeing Rob or Game & Watch or Captain Falcon or Fox, because those just aren't big series. I mean, like, we haven't seen an F-Zero game in 20 years. Game & Watch, like, there hasn't been a Game & Watch in 30 years. Like, there's like they're there because they're important for gaming and Nintendo, but they're not. Like,
we would see plenty of Fire Emblem.
Yeah, if we just had those, if we had the three that are out or coming out, Mario, Sonic, Pikachu, and then one more, like Link or Samus. Like Samus isn't as big as Zelda or Mario, but it could do very well with a movie, and that could be another. She could be another introduction into this potential video game universe, which would be great. So if we had 4 or 5 people, that's all I think we need. And then maybe they can all just go back to their own worlds and, call it a day after they save the day, and then come back 5 years later and do it again. And then 5 years later, do it again. Like the Avengers.
Add more. Not a bad idea.
Yeah, and add more every time. So
not a bad idea at all.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Rocket Talk. That was part 1 of 2. 2 will be coming out very soon, but please like this and share it all over the interwebs, and please let us know what you guys want to hear from us, and we will try to get to those topics as quickly as possible. Again, thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.